around the bush. Let's not dilly-dally a moment longer. Let's get right to the point. Hello.
Do it.
Welcome to F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, episode 172. You're a major player here, Mark. You could change the entire direction in one move, and I think it's not often that we're at this point this early in the procedure. It's a futile fall showdown, breathing hard and stuttering since 2021. All 525 songs still going head-to-head. We are still in round 3, last 125, but we are very close to ending this. A work in progress due no longer about 2026. Big love to all them we fall, especially them who are re-annotating. Joined as always by the AA Walker of Pemberton, Alistair Aspinall. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. The scare ball's out. Look at that. I've not seen that for a bit.
That's nice. It's not often that it visits you, but what t-shirt you got on the...
Oh, it's a vintage do-rag.
Vintage do-rag. Is there any other kind? Joined by the late winter of our sinus-inflamed friend, Danby.
Medicated, dedicated, weak in constitution, positively Confucian.
Brilliant. Now that's the kind of wisdom that we come here for. But tonight we have a figure walks up against Cosmos 7 somehow. All leave cancelled against dedication, no medication. And the big one for some, winter against backdrop. How are you feeling about these, Dan?
Yes, I mean, there is one of these that is quite a massive Clash of the Titans style stuff. And then there are a couple. One, I'm wondering how it got here based on the song itself, and one based on the path that it took to get here. Not that it's a bad song or anything. Okay. But yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff here. And I'm going to be honest, one of them I'd never heard before.
What about that? Al, what about you? You reckon these it's easy days?
We'll find out in an hour or so.
We will indeed. All right, take it away, boys.
Kit Kats.
Kitokatu.
Is Japan still land of the many flavoured Kit Kats?
Oh yeah, matcha, cherry, anything you like. There's a little Kit Kat shop actually in the centre. Get all your flavoured Kit Kats.
Bingo walks behind you, Shadow walks behind you, Bingo walks behind you, Shadow walks behind you, I'm behind you, I'm behind you.
Was duped. Alistair, coming to you first. We got a figure walks up against Cosmos 7 from Ersatz GB. What do you reckon?
Well, you know, they're both songs by that band, The Fall, aren't they? Well, yeah, I met the usual Hank Marvin stalking jock at the beginning. But, you know, the figure walks is brilliant. Simple mix is very interesting. That stands out quite a bit. Yeah, you got like the psyche feel to it, which, especially with the lead guitar, with the guitar doing nice fast shit, which kind of like gives it a bit of a punky feel to it. It's that punky side. Ooh. But yeah, again, it's like that. You're more rough edge of the Velvet. I can hear on it. I really like the level of distortion on the guitar at times. The one bit I don't really like about the song is when you get like the vocal, the guitar, and the bass doing the same progression just dead briefly. It kind of like, I don't know. It sounds a bit, you know, just shoved in there to break things up. Cosmos 7, he stuck two different versions of both on. I'll go back to Figure Walks, the live version that you put on there. The drums sound mad ass. It sounds like the toms like somebody tapping on a desk, and the vocals are way too loud. And, bass and guitar could have had a bit more volume. That would have been helpful. But, not a bad version. You can hear different things in it again, which is, it's always with the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T in the go in the studio, that kind of like, that's the amber caught in amber kind of moment where that's the version that you're used to, but there'll have been like many versions of it as it's kind of like developed. So it's interesting just hearing an early version of it. But yeah, Cosmos 7 reminds me a bit of F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T doing a Motorhead cover. Some nice vocals, which are in time, which is probably all a bit Pro Tools-y.
Yeah.
And there's some nice sort of like death metal growls in the background, which were entertaining. And he did the outtake on there, which wasn't bad. It was a bit more pubby than the first version, but I would have liked to have heard a duck quack effect on the synth. That'd have been nice.
Maybe a helicopter.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a helicopter at the duck.
Very good. Snur has joined us. No Max this evening by the looks of it, but Snur has joined us and said this Figure Walks a creepy Bo Diddley jam is just the kind of oddness that makes Dragnet a pleasure to listen to. There's that weird stereo separation with the drums and Craig in one ear and Riley isolated in the other, a portent of things to come. Some of Riley's best playing, that crisp, clean sound with a touch of spring reverb, the sparseness making one of the most effective long fade outs ever recorded. Smith's muffled delivery of pearls, like it may remove the pegs, keeping my eyes open, is really evocative of that uncanny fear of the danger that sleep might bring. Interesting. Dan, what do you and our friend Stuart think of these two?
Let's figure out how they got here, and I'll take myself off mute while we're doing that. So, the one that I had a bit of an issue with is Figure Walks, which I like as a song, knocked out Two Steps Back and Room to Live, which are two big favourites of mine. But it's a good song, and I can understand the thought process going into that. Cosmos 7 beat Sir William Ray, and in a three-way dance defeated Smith and Mark and Reese Dick.
Easy, right?
Well, I like Sir William Ray. I would have chosen that, but again, this is all very understandable stuff. A Figure Walks. I went back to Dragnet recently because in my head, and I don't know what other Fall fans think of this, that it feels almost kind of like transitional between this sort of like ersatz punk with Carnival keyboards of the first record and then them becoming the Fall from Grotesque onwards. But I sort of have started to rethink that idea that this is them, that maybe their first real like original record where they're kind of really generating some original stuff for themselves. And like, there's also I think A Figure Walks is one of the few examples on this album of paths not taken, but they could have, and it would have been very compelling and very interesting. This very sparse and slightly unaffected, like actually repetitive rather than just saying repetition and actually being very all over the map. I like it. I think Figure Walks is a really good song. Yeah, I can hear the Bo Diddley thing. I think it's really cool. Some of the lyrics as well kind of feel relevant to me this morning. It may remove the pegs, keeping my eyes open. Another slightly Burgessy touch, note. In fact, let me just ask a question. Like, are Burgess and Smith linked? Because I've mentioned this before, but I don't hear it very often from other people.
I've never heard any direct references at all. So it'd be surprising if he hadn't come across it. And obviously people reference Smith, and I brought this up. Smith maybe tapping into a little bit of Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange as well as part of his early character. So it's in the mix, but not really been made explicit as far as I know.
Okay, very interesting. And Cosmos 7. So I was chatting with Stu after he sent me his comments, which I'll read in just a sec. And he says that I tend to choose based on which one I feel would most likely punch me in the neck. And I say, well, Cosmos 7 would be more likely to ask you if you want nuts as well as getting you a pint in. And that it's... And then it sort of feels like the opening of a band that is saying, "Hello, Sobe Bridge, we are Cosmos 7." Like it's this is a contender for one of my least favourite Fall album tracks. I think it's bloody awful from soup to nuts, and it just sounds like a terrible local. All the sounds are wrong. Mez is doing his best with not a lot. I think Ersatz GB is also, even if it's not particularly well rated, it's overrated. So this ain't for me. Shall I do Stu? Because Stu's been a bit more erudite than my mucus-infected mind.
I'll just respond to yours a little bit. I agree with Ersatz GB. I think I like Taking Off the Net Will Not Return. and Greenway I have some time for, but that's it, and that's kind of stretching it a bit. But yeah, I like if you prefer a milder indie rock band, yes, indeed. What does Stuart think then?
So Stu says the figure walks, simplistic lines creating a unique overall texture, adding to an unequaled atmosphere, pure weird poetry and a totally convincing vocal delivery. The stereo mix is really weird too, with the drums panned almost completely to the far right, makes it an odd headphone experience. Great stuff. And then Cosmos7, he says, good fun for a straight rocker, and I love Mez's soft lad touches at the beginning, and he has some great gargles and vocal ticks, but the song itself isn't much cop. It's a good Mez is still backstage and lost in the curtains, so we need a riff to play track and nothing more than that.
I'm actually surprised he didn't go at it a bit harder because, he's not shown a lot of love for those really mild, almost kind of like pseudo garagey, pubby kind of things.
No, I realised that the answer could be found by simply listening to the corresponding episode, but what was the kind of rationale that put this ahead of Sir William Ray, which is kind of it's not the greatest song, but it's a kind of a very considered song with a nice melody and
I don't know, and I don't remember. What's that?
Was that the first round?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
second round, I think.
Yeah,
second round.
William Ray is an okay tune. This is okay tune. If you go back and listen, there's no way I voted for this. I will have voted for William Ray. I'm not sure what would have put it through, or sent this through. I've no idea. It's perplexing. The only thing I can see is when you read what it had put out, I'd be like, I wouldn't be any more excited about any of those going into round 4. So it's not a big loss for me. For me, a figure walks that there's so much space. And I think it's one of their first like mood songs. Like the thing you pointed out, Dan, about it being their first kind of record in a way is something I've seen quite a lot of, because obviously Craig and Steve are on board for the first time, and it's the first step towards the band that would become the Hex kind of monolith, really. So and the story, it does paths not taken, or in this case, in my mind, paths that were taken, in the sense that the story element would be expanded on in grotesque and kind of, and then the actual the mood song would get perverted by language and smile and even things like Hex and Strife Not, Hex and Hour, is that what it's called?
Hex and Definitive.
Hex and Definitive, of course. For me, it is almost like Proto-Fall in that sense, that and I do like what Alistair said about, kind of when they get in lockstep for a minute. They don't do it for very long, and I'm glad they don't, and I'm glad there's not a big B part. There's no big break. Of course, it does have a little bit of a versy chorusy thing going on, but it doesn't really break from that actual repetition very much, and it does a really good job. The old golden savages killed their philosophers. Thought brought the drought about. Something followed me. And then he breaks it. For me, he spoils it by saying, I may turn and hit it. And he breaks the illusion sometime. But he describes it as a song written during a long walk home wearing an anorak, which restricted vision by 2/3. And then again, in the interview, he blurts out, it's not a human. It's a monster from outer space. It's like, have you read Picnic at Hanging Rock?
I've seen it.
And apparently, there's another chapter which was never included in the book, which basically says, oh, it was aliens all along. And totally, absolutely spoils it in the way that I probably just have for you and everybody else who's listening. That's what he did there in my mind. But Cosmos 7, there's a tight fuzzy bass and some nice blippy synths, Mark gurgling and rasping, but it's really generic and light and very little substance to it. The Mez falsetto backing vocals are nice, but yeah, there's just absolutely so little to it.
Both versions of this, because there is the B side of Laptop Dog, that wonderful single. They're both incredibly inscrutable and rather different, but they're connected by the fact that I have no idea what the fuck is going on.
No, yeah, and his lyrics are okay, but they're not really tickling my fancy, as it were. Snare says there's no questioning the skill in the bass and drums locking in, but that bridge on Cosmos 7, straight lift from Jets, Are You Going to Be My Girl? We're not going to play it. If I'd thought of that in advance, I might have. Lyrics which promise something of space age or futuristic, but are immediately brought down to earth by a bump, by one of the most aggressive bits of music the Fall ever recorded. Like using a VR headset to watch the wrestling on World of Sport. This or a figure walks. Easy, easy. Brilliant, well done, sir. So let's let's go. Let's trudge through the inevitable. Dan, which way are you going?
I'm going to figure walked, and Stu has gone a figure walked 3, Cosmo 1.5.
1.5. Still, it's more faint praise than it deserves. I'm also going to figure walks, and Alistair, come on.
Come on, yeah, figure walks.
Easy in it. Now we're going to something that for me was a little bit more, in fact, quite a lot more of a challenge to parse these two because they're both late era long form jams. And interestingly enough, of the 6 songs tonight, 5 of them are long jams for like more than 6 minutes. All of them except for Cosmos 7, which is mercifully short at 2 minutes 49. But yeah, we have All Leave Cancelled, clocking in at 8 minutes 20. And Dedication Not Medication, the LP version, the vinyl version, clocking at 7.5 minutes. So let's have a gander.
Their full cooperation with the Fall and their associates.
I would say the Anti-Fall Association. I would say Johnny Cookie, how could you subscribe? Bad grip, bad pills, bad grip, bad bats. Pills.
So we had the vinyl version of Dedication Not Medication, which Smith doesn't start singing till 6 minutes into the 8-minute song, which is absolutely brilliant. Great choice. And I played a little bit of the Paradox Obscura song called November. Somebody has pointed out along the way that it is very similar, and it's a Greek duo, which will make a connection there to Eleni, and it came out like a month before they started playing this not medication, not dedication live, and it was also up against the absolute bass fuzz madness of All Leave Cancelled. DB, what do you reckon to these two?
So let's have a listen to how they got here. So All Leave Cancelled beat the outro to the 27 points, which I'm not familiar with, and the bad stuff. Dedication Not Medication beat Tommy Shooter and Job Search, which makes sense to me. All Leave Cancelled. I almost sound like a kind of an idiot who's only just encountered the Fall, but I didn't know this song very well, and it didn't sit very well with my mucus racked head because of its uneven mixing, shall we say, and its propensity to go off on one. When I had a few swigs of my Lemsip cough mixture, which I'm holding up to the screen, which you can't see if you're watching in podcast form, it made a lot more sense to me, and I enjoyed every section of it and just wished each of them would go on longer. I enjoyed the kind of the almost black metal textures that are going on vocally quite early on.
Yeah.
I think there's about 4 good songs in here, and it's almost a shame that they're all just on one. The band play beautifully, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have just done a little bit of research. This is also a Darren Garrett on second drums.
It is.
joint.
So both of these tracks Darren's on, and the weird thing is today I was in the record shop and I was and the Pram album was up on the wall for like 80 quid, like the first Pram album that Darren plays on, and I was going to message him today and just say, and then I realized, oh, he's on both of these tracks as well. He made a big difference when he stepped in for that year. It really
Absolutely.
enlivened.
I completely. Which Pram album is that? The
first one.
In Dreams You Two Can Fly. That one,
Yeah,
or the one that's got. I really like. Well, it's funny you should mention Pram, because obviously that song, was it Paradox Obscura? What that Greek pop song you just played?
Yeah.
I was thinking that sounds Pram influenced. No, it doesn't sound like Pram, but it's got that kind of low slung electro kind of thing. Anyway, Dedication Not Medication is a long-time favourite of mine, particularly from this late period. I have to say I have slightly more affinity for the CD version rather than the LP version, because it makes really good use of that fantastic vocal hook, the third groove. I just love that. I think that's like one of his best vocal hooks across the discography, and I love the groove. It's kind of a little bit menacing, but it's very accessible, like understated to a certain extent, like just lets the percussion and that bass do its thing, and then everything's just kind of in like little amorphous blobs in and out. I can't say that the LP version did a whole lot or added anything new to the experience for me. But yeah, I think these are 2 really good songs. It is a bit easier for me than it is for you, but doff my cap to one of these songs that for me will be going out, because bloody good job, sir.
Considering both of them are from about 2016-ish, it's absolute madness. And one thing that is striking me as we get further in this competition, and the longer songs are doing way better than the shorter ones along the way, and especially in the second half. And I guess the question for both of you is, in the second half of the, especially after Reformation, those last 5 or 6 with the lads, is it the long songs really that are really the only decent ones, or the really good ones?
I think what happens is they start pissing around in the studio, and they're bouncing ideas off each other. Mark's not exactly discouraging them from sort of like going down rabbit holes with stuff. It's when they let free. It's like toy there.
It's like toy there. I'm looking at Sublingual though, and kind of Dedication Not Medication. Obviously, the longer version I really like, but the shorter version is nearly 5 minutes. But then you've got Younger Cloth, which you loved, and Pledge, and Fiberbook Troll, and those kind of songs, and even the ones that they're only about 4 or 5 minutes long, but they feel much longer than that. They feel, which, like Perverted by Language, it's kind of, I know they then went back to shorter songs, but it really feels like the last 4 or 5 albums, it really is the long songs. And like you were saying, 4 or 5 songs, and obviously Couples versus Jobless on the last record is exactly that. It was like 4 songs stuck together.
I would say it's not necessarily to do with length as such. I think it's to do with like single grooves. So like Chino is a relatively short song. It's about 4.5 minutes, but it's basically one bit. And I think that the better pop songs from this later era are the ones done by the dudes.
I would agree.
They have more of a pop neck.
Well, I'm looking again through, and none of the shorter songs, as in pop song, are jumping out to me as the ones
I like
that
Black Roof.
But Black Roof's a Tim Presley song.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, sorry. I think I might have like.
But it's later. No, Black Roof is much later, but it's a Tim Presley song.
I thought the dudes were the Americans. I just meant the Americans. The American shorter songs are good.
No, I agree. That's what I got to. Yeah. So, is Black Roof on Reformation? Have I mixed it up?
It's Black Roof is on Sublingual Tablet.
Yeah, and it's where they went back and got a Presley song, and it's one of the best shorter, poppier songs that they kind of did. And then the other ones, like things like Kinder of Spine, but it sticks out. And pre-MDMA is that they're short, but they're weird. So I just feel like I know I'm banging on a bit here, but I just think the longer form stuff for the lads was where their strengths are at. And, I really wish they'd had a bit more of a chance to explore that for a couple more years. He would have still only been, but he wouldn't have even been 70 now, I don't think, would he? Smith?
No. Yeah, when did he go? 2020? He'd have been like 66.
Yeah, so it's crazy, isn't it? Jeez Louise. But I can't remember what I've asked any of you. Alistair, I'll come to you and then I'll come back for what Stu thinks, because we've not got Stu's opinion yet, right? Al, what do you think of these two?
Pretty much what you've been saying. They're both very good long songs, which, they're all over the place, aren't they? They're not afraid of sort of like taking risks. I'll leave cancelled a bit sort of like crowty, with a bit like kind of a proggy feel to it at times, but more crowty. I love the effects on the guitar being turned up to number 11. So it leaves the bass and the drums just to pick up with a riff. Like, as I said before, it just sounds like they're having a lot of fun doing it. Like the psyche approach. It just gets really, really good in different parts. Dedication, not medication. I love Sublingual. I love the high energy drum and bass groove with a 70s Doctor Who soundtrack synth. Like, very amusing. Reminded me a little bit of Cling Clang in some ways. I think they were probably knocking around about this time, right? But yeah, with the higher energy kind of drumming and the sort of like the strict groove remind me a little bit of Portugal, but that's just the drumming. The two really long jammed out songs which appeal to me.
Absolutely. The one thing that really stood out to me, because I know I said I do really like the vinyl version of Dedication or Medication, is how that groove, because I've talked a lot about not particularly being a fan of the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T instrumental stuff when Smith isn't around and you're more or less just waiting for him to start in most of those cases. It wasn't the case with this for me. I thought really has grown on me, because as much as I like the vocal melody, and it is a great one, and this is the same for some of the Can stuff where the vocal melody is a little bit too melodic. I go back and forth on it. So some stuff like Vitamin C or Sing Me Swan Song, it's like some days they're absolutely my favorites, and other days I'm just like, I don't need something this poppy over the top of this groove. And I feel the same about that. And today I was more on the side of like, I like what he's doing more on All Leave Cancelled, which is all over the shop. There's no real melody. But the groove is brilliant. And we'll come to Backdrop later. My kind of problem with the fact that because I don't particularly like the groove, it doesn't really matter what he's doing on top of it, because it's still got to have that musical hook. In one of the Smith pulling strings from the other side, Dan, you probably don't know this, but you might have listened to the episode, when we had Stefan Cook on, who was running the F.A.L.L.O.U.T.P.O.D.C.A.S.T, this song came on. This was on the playlist that evening, totally randomly. And it was only as we were talking about it, they were like, oh, he's talking about you in this song, right? And he's like, yeah, it's about me. And That's absolutely bonkers. Connie and Cookie, which would be Conway, Patton, and Stefan. I took this orange speed. Unbelievably, this orange speed slowed my urinary function, and I think this is one of the. If we take it at face value that this is about him actually getting pills to stop him wetting the bed, it's one of the most honest rock and roll songs you will ever come across, because it's not done with a parody like you would get someone who's talking about the old getting old or whatever. No, he's just straight up like, I got these bed wet pills, and I'm not really sure I'm on board with it. What does Snurf say? Snurf says for all leave cancelled. I'm guessing all the bits that didn't make the album were swept into a dustpan to make this mediocre offering. Essentially an ill-formed studio doc about, but there's enough to like the Smith Evil Vox at the start, some nice bass and drum grooves, decent synth squalls. They're all a bit underpinned by a downbeat, slinty post-rock pallor. Yeah, I got elements of slint in there for sure. It all needs a bit more of a sense of purpose. Can't imagine it going much further than this round. Well, Snur, my friend, if I've got anything to do with it, it will be. I do think that the Smiths gurgling black metal at the beginning is a brilliant outlier in the catalogue. Nothing else like it. Love the bassy groove. It's got some really nice wonky guitar and raspy low keys. It's a wonderful wild exploration of a very simple riff. And I wish they had more of this. I wish that there were full albums, which is getting into kind of Swans territory. I mean, I know it's not as heavy as that stuff, but you know what I mean? It's kind of heading towards that 20-minute workouts and workout. 20, what are you going on about? 20-minute workouts. Exactly. What does Stu think?
Stu certainly doesn't call them workouts. So I'll leave cancelled, he says. A thoroughly awful mix, but maybe it makes more sense on Erline complimentary earbuds. A collection of interesting and promising bits of riffs that feel bolted together at random, while Mez reads from a Tesco receipt and Eleni discovers the resonance control. I've spent the week listening to Sun Ra bootlegs, and most of them had more clarity than this muck. However, there are so many great moments within this mess, around the 4.5-minute mark when it locks into the 2-note bass figure and Mez starts on the all leave cancel refrain. It's almost sublime. And of Dedication Up Medication, Stu says, I really like this one. Unlike Cosmo, the core bass riff here has the sort of interesting groove to go on as long as it wants to, and the busy drumming against the abstract keys are all I could want from a 15-minute track at least. It really benefits from the longer mix on the vinyl. Lyrically, it's funny as fuck too, which is a bonus, but I think my ideal version would get rid of the funny, in inverted commas, tape cassette vocal stuff on the long version and use the vocal from the CD version instead. But 2 good versions is better than 1, I suppose.
Indeed. Who can't be trusted with 1 half bucket of whiskey without injecting salad? All leave is cancelled. Is your art so shallow? Do you have to abuse the indigenous over the borders of M1 with your savage Puritan Polishness? Indeed.
Who could that be?
Exactly. But yeah, the all leave cancelled. This is the last one before Eleni left, right? And yeah, I can't help but think that it's a not very it's a thinly veiled go at her, but I don't know, because I mean, she's not Polish for a start, but there are maybe I'm reading too much. However, on the other side of things, and Pierce Brosnan, how dare you prescribe sad grief and bedwet pills? I mean, that is just absolute magic, really, isn't it? And as I said, on any given day, it's my favorite, or something that I just think, come on. What does Snare think about this one? I like this one quite a bit. The driving, minimal bass, drums and rhythmic guitar are a great foil for Smith's medical carping. The way he mucks about with the order of the words to repurpose grief across the song is cool, and the ill-disciplined bongy synth is the perfect musical mirror held up to Smith's unreliable bladder. Yeah, fuzzy bass, funky groove, and those woozy modulated kind of synths breaks down, and then it comes back in with a big groove. Yes, Spur, that on that live version, which is a pretty good recording and video. Dave, the Eagles getting really deep into that pocket, and can't fault him for it at all. Did you tell us how it got here?
I think I did, but I could just say it again. Dedication beat Tommy Shooter and Job Search.
Oh yeah, you did, yeah, and they're pretty obscure ones, and neither of them are particularly great. So yeah, all in all. But we are at that point where we do have to make a vote. I can already sense which way this is going. I am going for all leave cancelled, but I may well be in the minority. Which way are you going, Dan?
I'm going for our Dedication, and our friend from the other side, Stu, went all leave 2, Dedication 3.
That's interesting, isn't he? He's still scoring all leave 2 points, and he's done away with his thousands and thousands of points. He's playing it straight down the line these days, isn't he? Alistair, which way are you going?
I'm going to split.
Splitting won't help. If you'd have gone all leave cancel, we'd have gone to the fingers, but splitting still sends Dedication through. As I leave that hanging in the air. No. All right, there you go. So Dedication, not Medication, goes through, and a figure walks also goes through, which gives us to our last showdown of the evening, which is Winter against Backdrop. For me, as I've already alluded to, not a difficult choice, but I know for the average, normal, sensible Fall fan, it's a toughie. Let's have a listen.
It could have stopped there.
Really?
Hey, Winter, right? Good man, good man. Signs you never saw.
Ryan, please.
I'll take the both of you on. And 2 weeks before, the match turned up.
Entrances uncovered, street signs you never saw. All entrances delivered, courtesy Winter. Entrances uncovered, street signs you never saw. That little makes me tremble.
Girlfriend and chains. Ha ha! Ha ha! Ha ha! You wouldn't laugh if you had to take them off the backdrop. Shit.
It is about time. I played that in a whole version of Backdrop because, as I kind of mentioned earlier, Backdrop has never really struck me very much because I just really don't like that groove. It's dirgy. It doesn't really go anywhere for me. But the version live in a whole, because, and I know it's probably just the mix more than anything, the guitars and the drums are up higher in the mix. It's probably the best version for me. It's just that we got that one note breakdown, some nice noise in there, but all in all, it really doesn't do very much for me at all. And I know I'm in the minority here, so I'm really interested to hear one more time why I'm completely wrong. But whereas Winter, it's only two notes, more or less, that beautiful twangy bass, but it's just such a minimal and wintry and austere kind of bed for one of Smith's absolutely amazing kind of most obtuse sci-fi time displacement stories that no matter how many times you hear it, you know something's in there, but it doesn't quite give up and tell you what its meaning is. It's always kind of waiting, although it does resolve in those breaks, which I prefer it not to actually, but the tension then just keeps coming back. And some beautiful wiry kind of guitar, especially on some of the live versions like Parts of America. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful song that has grown on me every single time we've come back to it. And this is a song I was already, relatively keen on, but yeah, it's an absolute gem. Alistair, what does Winter and Backdrop do for you? Fucking hell. We're on it today, aren't we? This is the first double muting in a long time. Oh, this is good stuff. Go on, have another go.
Yeah, it's one that I've known for years and years, never listened to God knows how many times, but it's still beautiful. Still love it. Like he was talking about that minimal groove with everything kind of like just working, like just doing little changes here, there, and everywhere to keep it interesting. And yeah, the story and it was quite nice, but I love the way the drums work together. And it's like it's a really long song and it's dead repetitive, but it's not boring. Backdrop, do like, yeah, really good early nasty rhythmic dirge. And you're saying you weren't too keen on the sort of the beats, Brendan. That's kind of the way I work a lot of the time when I'm jamming, where you take a really long approach. You're keeping like it in time, but you can just chuck in a little something to make it sound different, and you kind of like gives it a bit more of an unpredictability to it. But I think this one, as you was talking before, like about Figure Walks. I think this is like a bit of a prototype to like the approach you take on some later stuff, like Hex Perverted, Room to Live kind of territory. And again, yeah, do love the drums on it.
Yeah, well, for me, it's not the drums; it's the bass line. It's that do 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 do. It's like it doesn't do it for me in the way that the other longer songs tonight all did. They all had a bit more about it, and that's just my ear of the melody. I know people are shouting and throwing things at their cell phone right now, the cellular mobile phone right now, but that's just what I think. Populace people. That's just my opinion, and it's right. Dan, what do you think about these two?
Well, there's a lot to say here, so let's just remind ourselves how they got here. So Winter beats The North Will Rise Again, not an easy one, and The Mixer, slightly easier, but I like The Mixer.
Yeah.
I think The North Will Rise Again may have found its way back in,
yeah, it did.
but also has since re-exited. Backdrop, I believe, lost to The Man Whose Head Expanded, and then found its way back in. And how did it fare against Container Drivers? Because it's still here. I'm sure if I Container Driver, I feel like it might have returned at least once, maybe more. I have a question before I kind of talk about these two songs.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of talked a little bit about, or I've mentioned like Paths Not Taken, or more broadly like what ifs of the Fall. And I think one of the big ones is what if a studio version of Backdrop actually existed? So we didn't have to. I mean, I like these live versions, but I feel like a definitive version would be nice. Like, do either of you two have like a Fall what if? Like a road that you wish they just pushed a little bit more, or something that you wish uncovered?
The one I keep coming back to is they were on such a roll with Perverted by Language, and then Bricks came along, and it was wonderful and frightening stuff. It was brilliant, but it was a left turn into a poppy world, and I do always think, just like I said with Sublingual, they were kind of knocking it out of the park at that point. And if he hadn't got sick and if they'd have carried on down that path. So that's two. And it's mostly both, like when they got into those bit longer grooves and they were really starting to nail it. And they're just like, just give me a few more albums of that stuff. And little things here. One of the things is the amount of times they've done things once. And Stu said it a lot, give me an album's worth of this stuff. But they just never did. And I think in a way that's also beautiful that they didn't do 4 more albums of Perverted by Language, and then we were like, yeah, they were all right.
I think my what if would be, what if they didn't sign to a major label and they didn't have all this commercial pressure to turn out stuff that's going to shift units, and they just carried on doing stuff that they thought, yeah, we want to do this.
Yeah, what around when they did shift work and the likes.
Yeah.
That led them to make so many interesting other decisions within those constraints, though, for me. Although it did mean they buried Craig's guitar 10 feet beneath the earth. Okay, yeah, those are some interesting ones. So I guess I'm going to have a think what mine is whilst I'm talking about these two. Yeah. So Winter.
The other one would be just what if they'd patched it up with the TLC lads before, and Reformation hadn't needed to happen. And because they're so similar in many ways to the lads that came after, but they're less pubby and they're less heavy metally. So I wonder if he'd have been in that position to do 6 or 7 records with with those lads, what that would have happened like.
Yeah, I guess my big one is like, just what if he hadn't busted with Steve, with Shanley? I think that might have that would be an interesting one. Anyway, back to the task in hand. So my only problem with Winter is not even a problem with the song itself. I first encountered it on the Psychic Dancehall compilation, where it's just half the song. It's just the Hostel Maxi version, and then when you finally get hold of it on vinyl, you have to flip it to listen to the rest. So I don't think they've presented this perfect song as well as they could have, in order to play kind of funny little games with presentation, which I don't actually think help in the long run when you're trying to like enjoy something, especially a song that is like predicated on like just a very insistent, wonderful, endless groove. I love the lyrics. I think they're very funny. There also is a song that kind of, this might sound almost kind of a bit, I don't know, I'm just going to say it and you can decide how it sounds. It's one of the first lyrics that taught me you didn't have to be like politically correct in a lyric. And you could just sort of, you could create a lyric and just assume that your audience is intelligent enough to understand that you are doing a thing and not being like cruel, or it's you're observing and you're kind of, but not without judgment. Backdrop, yeah, I mean, Backdrop is, I suppose, like, it's kind of the hipster's choice, isn't it? Because it's this buried artifact, and it is a really great song. And I'm with Al that I love a dirge. I'm a big fan of a dirge, just generally. It doesn't have to be by the Fall. Like, I like a lot of bands whose stock in trade are long dirges, just kind of relentlessly and slowly hammering 1 or 2 ideas into a fine pulp. I think, though, with Backdrop, as brilliant as it is and as funny as it is, and it has some great hooks, like I think on a previous episode I've talked about the Lester YTS. The second time he says that is like my favourite full vocal moment. It doesn't need to go on as long as this. It really doesn't need to go on as long as this. The point is made 5.5, 6 minutes in, and from the rest you're kind of on diminishing returns. That said, I'm just trying to find, this is kind of like trying to find holes in greatness with both of these songs. Like, they're very niggling, trifling little ills, and I wish both of these could appear in round 4, but they can't.
It's unlikely. I think if Winter goes out, it's got a chance of coming back. I think if Backdrop goes out, it's done for this time. I've got a feeling that Backdrop and Manu Eggs Expanded was on that same episode with Dedication Up Medication. I seem to remember talking about it with Stefan. Yeah, Snow reckons the winter, the temperature drops in those first few bars. I'm instantly in monochrome modernist housing somewhere in Eastern Europe. It's negative 20 degrees. And I think the group's most evocative song, it certainly has a cinematic quality few of the fall tunes have achieved. That really brings the best out in Smith's more narrative lyrics. And I'm really interested in decoding the words. It's one of those occasions where the less you know, the more your mind can wander. P.S. I'm calling this entire competition here and now. I don't think Winter's going to get in the final. I think it doesn't seem to strike a chord with enough of us. It definitely should be way up there. And again, I guess it really depends on how much those lyrics do for you. And for me, a good lyric that matches with that mood is all I need. He was about 7. His mother was a cleaning lady. She had a large black dog, and the mad sick kid said, "Give me the lead, give me the lead." And yeah, it's a beautiful little story. Even without this kind of mysterious idea of him being possessed by the alcoholic spirit, in a way, possibly a Spectre versus Rector kind of follow-up almost. And my youth, it was sold. 2 white birds cross the sky, look like krakens. And then this really interesting bit about the lights, where the average is 2.5 lights, the mediocre has 2 lights, and the sign of genius is 3 lights. And he would often change the number of lights, but he never changed the order. The mad kid always has more lights than everybody else, and that in itself is a beautiful thing. And they're liking it. I think this might be Danny possibly liking it again to non-linear time. NWRA, I think, is just a storytelling device, but I think time is running in a non-linear fashion in this song to some degree. Whereas Backdrop, I think, is not time displacement so much, or kind of almost doing that Alan Garner redshift thing where the backdrop is changing, but the time may be changing, but the people and places are staying the same, or vice versa.
Well, musically speaking, my favourite bit in Winter is the most time displacementy, which is where Craig's guitar seems to kind of like slow down on that 2 minute. That's like magic to me. So I think there's a simpatico here between lyric and music. However intended it was, I don't know, but it's brilliant.
Indeed, yes. The reptilian TEP instructor merged with Stinking Billy's morass of flesh, and the Yorkies drifted 902 Metropole. The Yorkies, Ripley Yorks, shifted and drifted, which seems to be a reference to the Manchester Regiment when the Jacobite uprising, which fizzled out somewhere in the north of England, which Smith also writes about in the Otherwise. There's references to that same thing. And he also seems to reference lyrics from Backdrop around the time of Burt Wilson's Golden Shot, which is quite interesting because actually that was probably the time he was writing the Otherwise, not too far around that. So I wonder whether he was looking back at these things, and that's why it jumped out. Yes. Did we hear from Stuart?
We didn't, shall we?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Winter, Stu says, the beauty and terror in the workings of the world encapsulated in a few minutes of spacious and somehow delicate music. Really magical. The small moments of brutality along the way are like perfect bit of added spice, and Hanley's bass line is one of his best for me. Brendan, the matchup here is fucking cruel. But he continues, Backdrop, one of my all-time favourites. If the Winter bass line was one of the best, this may be the very best of the lot. It grinds along while the drums pummel and the guitar lays down a field of clean and cheese wire guitar. Mez is in time travel PKD mode, spinning an evocative and elusive tale of cycles and patterns. It all adds up to a snarling but hypnotic, imposing slab of menace that could just keep on going. Beautiful.
I get it. There's a lot of love out there. You talk about what could have been. We've mentioned more than once that if there had been a studio version of Backdrop, and if it had have been on Hex instead of Step Sways, that for me is that album is massively improved by having Backdrop on it. And I think Backdrop and This Day finishing out the both sides, and then having Winter as a full track on there. that for me is, but probably maybe because it is this lost kind of thing, it isn't quite hitting as much for me because maybe I feel like it hasn't really finished. But I know that's not right and that's not fair because that doesn't even make any sense. I'd say the exact opposite about many other lost tracks. Backdrop Snare, one of my favorite discoveries in the early days when very few unknown tracks trickled out through official channels and the source, Fall in a Hole, was impossible to track down. Proper nice two drummer workout with plenty of those cowbell trills to keep me happy. It developed a really impressive head of steam in the middle and it was clear the last track of the set on that Australian tour. 10 minutes I would have loved to witness. If this had closed out Room to Live instead of Papal Visit, might have had fewer naysayers. Indeed. Alistair, did you know Backdrop very well before we started this competition?
No, I didn't. It was one that was new to me. But it was what the fuck? Where does this come from?
Exactly right. It's the same. I don't think I'd come across it before. Maybe on Live in a Hole I might have at times. But yes, well, this could all go very badly for me here. So I am going for Winter. Which way are you going, Dan?
I'm also going for Winter, but Stu is going for Backdrop.
Oh, la. So maybe it's not. Once again, it's in the hands of Alistair. And if he splits, Winter goes through and Backdrop goes out. And if he goes to Backdrop, it's a draw.
Well, I'll split then because I just like to give Backdrop a bit of respect.
But you're putting it out.
Yeah, again.
Fair enough.
It's like when you get to the vets and it's just not getting any better.
Fair enough.
Would the fingers have saved Backdrop given that Stu gave Winter 4,000 and Backdrop 5,000?
That would have been a hard one, but they would have both ended up getting 3, so probably it would have been tight. We might have ended up with another one of those where we then have to go back and redo it one more time because we've got one of those. I can't remember what it is, but in the last episode of this round, we will have to go back and redo one. Speaking of last episodes of this round, I believe we have one, probably 2 proper episodes left of this round before we do the second chance bag and then move on. And the one that we were originally going to have John Olsen from Wolfeyes on right at the start of this round. It was the very first episode of the round, but things being what they are didn't happen. So I'm going to we'll come back to that one next week, which has actually one of the biggest showdowns that you'll ever come across, which is Hit the North versus Taurig. So get yourself ready for that. Still, I'm digressing. So A Figure Walks, Dedication Not Medication, and Winter all ease into the last 64. And that's all she wrote. And I'll see you all.
So to clarify, is the lad from Wolfeyes coming on, or is that...
I will mention it again. Insane Johnny, as he goes by on the Instagrams, with some very funny memes. I'll leave it up to him. I'd love to have him drop by, but I'll reach out to him one more time. But maybe the ship has sailed. Maybe you realise that nobody needs to know what the dude from Wolfeyes thinks about Hit the North.
You'd be surprised.
And there's the title of the episode. All right. Take it easy, gentlemen. I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, give it me.